pre-show quid pro quo. Marlin, you get one question. Go ahead and ask it.
Okay, hello. My question is, do you think that we as humans, or whoever we are, should know the answer to everything, or is it sometimes better to not know things?
Do I think we should know? No. I think that there is a compulsion within every single one of us as human beings to want to know more. We're extremely curious by nature, and our evolution up to this point has enabled us to be able to find answers to certain things, or at least what we think of are the answers. Mm-hmm. But this curiosity seems to be ingrained in us to somehow want to figure things out, and it's what makes us actually quite interesting as a species. Do I think that we have to? Well, as I mentioned in last week's episode, I like the idea of a mystery. I think a mystery is kind of one of those things that kind of keeps us going. I don't overall universally think that we need to know everything, but I think that in some regards, with certain aspects of what we find important, trying to seek the answer is a very important thing. Sometimes the journey is far more important than the actual destination itself. And I think that's a really important thing that we need to register in ourselves. I think the journey of getting there is better than the answer. So that's my answer, and I hope that kind of answers your question in a small way. That's a great question, Marlon. That's a really wonderful question.
Thank you. Well, the saying "ignorance is bliss" comes from somewhere, but I asked it because some of us live in a state of life, I would say, where we don't necessarily understand everything, right, and we're okay with it. Whereas others, like you said, well, I can't just do that. I need to find out.
Yeah, I don't need to find out. I think that let's take the trip.
Right.
Hey everybody, welcome to What Magic Is This, a podcast that would willingly pet all three of Cerberus's heads. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about magic, the occult, the esoteric, the supernatural, the paranormal, and the weird. And today I am joined by a very special guest by the name of Marlin. Marlin, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I give about 25 topics to my guests to pick from, and I don't get it. I choose what those 25 topics are. I don't get to choose what the guest is going to talk about. The guest has that option. And you picked an extremely interesting topic. You picked dreams.
I did.
And dreaming, which is wonderful. I just want to kind of digress here a little bit, because I've actually got an email or a couple of emails saying, when are you going to talk about magic? Like, when are you actually going to talk about, you've done one episode on spells, slide out of the saddle, cowboy. We need to slow things down a little bit. We have to go with these really broad, familiar topics. We'll get to the Enchiridion of Pope Leo soon enough. We're laying a foundation here. Stick with me. We'll get into the good stuff later. But in truth be told, I think that this episode is an extremely important one to have early on. Marlin, when I texted you about this topic, mm-hmm. It was one of the more interesting text conversations that I've had. I said, Marlin, what topic do you want to do? And you said dreams. And I said, oh, that's cool. Let's do it. I'm so extremely excited about this. And then you sent me a text back that says, because I lucid dream every night.
Yes.
And I went, huh? What? You said, yeah, I have a lucid dream every night. And I think after that you said something like, I hate it.
I actually do hate it.
Yeah. But you have an ability that countless magicians and Oneironauts would kill for. This ability to, every time you go to sleep, you are in some way in control of what you do in this dream realm. And that is incredible. Now, I do lucid dream, but I really have to work at it. I have to plan for it. I have to ramp myself up. It is a task. You merely have to go to sleep and you have a lucid dream. That is insane.
It is magic.
It is magic.
Whoever says you haven't touched base on magic, tell me how you can go to sleep and dream, whether you're lucid dreaming or not, and that's not considered magic.
I know.
It's not a recipe.
No, it's absolutely insane to me that you have this ability. And can I ask you though, like, why do you hate it?
Because of our earlier conversations where you said that there's science that studies think that the person who lucid dreams is not necessarily tired.
Right.
It's because I'm tired. You wake up and you feel that you just went into this
I've had a
virtual
day.
world. I've had a day.
Yeah.
and now I got to restart it, and I've had zero sleep.
Right. Right.
Like you feel that your brain was working out the entire night.
Yeah. Before we switched the microphones on, I had a conversation with her, and again, the studies on this are they haven't come to any kind of consensus in the fact that some people think that yes, these people are suffering that lucid dream every night because their brain is active, they are active within their dreams. And so they're very obviously tired. There's other studies that have shown that you're actually sleeping. You are still asleep. You do reach that repair deep sleep segment of sleep. And so it should have no ramifications. Truth be told, I think that maybe somehow in some way that you might hopefully, with a little bit of help, from good old Uncle Doug, get to a place where you're comfortable with this ability, because it's mind blowing to me that you have it. I know you think that it's a curse, but it is an absolute blessing or boon. And I hope in some way, maybe later on, because we're friends, maybe later on I can give you some tips, or I can give you some kind of a direction to take this lucid dreaming. So right off the bat, I want people to know that this is actually not going to be a show about lucid dreaming. That is a whole other episode for itself. It gets its own program. So we're going to just talk about dreams in general. Let's jump into it. Dreams. They are woefully understudied, and they have always been. Here's the thing, though. A person who's going to live to the average lifespan, 69 to 75 years of life, we will spend at least 6 of those years dreaming. So it is important in some way. And this is kind of shocking that for something that we do so often, that it's so pitifully undervalued in some way. There is no consensus as to the function of dreaming, so it's kind of been relegated in a way. Scientists kind of think, well, it's not as important as conscious neuroscience because we can't study it directly. We can only kind of study at a bit of a distance, which is sad, and it's very unfortunate. But this is starting to change. There are quite a few grants that are coming out and papers coming out about dreaming. Eventually, our science of the mind, while it is asleep, is only going to grow in the next 25 to 50 years. So we're in that sweet spot. We're in that area where we're just beginning to understand this kind of stuff. Also, I need to point out that dreams are and always have been the most common way people and cultures have had contact with the uncanny, as well as fulfilling a function of omens and prophecy and all that good jazz. This is definitely something that's for as long as we've been around, dreaming has been around. As I mentioned in an earlier episode, it was a 10-day series of dreams led me to the Temple of Magic. I can say this from a personal standpoint, no drug-induced hallucination that I have had has had as much of an impact as my dreams do with me. It's one of those things where I'm currently, because where I'm living is kind of, there's a lot of construction going around. I'm not sleeping great, and my dream recall has been extremely poor over the last month, and I can say with absolute certainty that it's kind of driving me a little insane. I'm kind of suffering a little bit because of it, and it's not it's not the most fun period of time for me right now. But dreams have also had functions for people that aren't magicians, very obviously. Albert Einstein, I always go to Einstein because he's somebody that everybody knows. He kind of had the idea, or was able to see his E = mc square formula when he was younger. When he was younger, he had a dream of he was going down a hill on a sled, and surrounding him were planets and stars. And as the sled got faster and faster as it was going down hills, the stars and the planets were changing shape, not in like some kind of distance from him, but they were actually physically changing shape. One of the CEOs of Google had a dream about a freer internet, a more connected web space where everything was easier to grasp and easier to see. Mary Shelley came up with the idea of Frankenstein. She dreamed of a scientist or a doctor bringing life to a dead body. Elias Howe had a dream in which he was surrounded by cannibals and they pointed spears in his face. and he was able in his dream to see these spears, but more specifically the heads of these spears, and he saw that they had holes in them. He remembers concentrating on these holes in the tips of these, not the tips, but in the head of the spear itself, and he woke up, and he immediately came up with the idea of how to make a sewing machine, which he didn't really invent, but how to make it more effective with a needle with a hole at the very tip of the needle, right? And the sewing machine is maybe one of the greatest inventions of all time. More recent examples will be something like James Watson had a dream where two snakes were kind of intertwirling with each other, and he woke up and he came up with the idea of the structure of the DNA molecule. Mm-hmm. So this kind of stuff is extremely, extremely fascinating. Ancient cultures, they knew that they were important. Seemingly every Assyrian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Tibetan, Japanese, Chinese, the list goes on. They've all thought dreams to have some kind of a function, a very important function in the way that they live their lives. Indigenous cultures of the past and indigenous cultures even to this day view them as a really important thing. And this is a shame because seemingly in the somewhat westernized world, we're kind of the only ones that don't think that dreaming serves any kind of function. It almost seems like almost an afterthought to the day. This is a shame. This is a real shame because we come to the conclusion that if it doesn't happen in the objective conscious world, it doesn't matter. There is a solve for this, which I will get into a little bit later. As far as magic is concerned, the Greek magical papyri, which is a book of spells basically from earlier on, I kind of have it as the starting point of modern magic as it is. 8% of the spells in this book are about dreams and sending dreams and receiving dreams or talking to gods in dreams. Of all the spells in this, and there's tons of spells in this book, it comes in fourth as to the amount of spells in these books. The Greeks, as they do, they created a whole structure around dreams. And in the 2nd century AD, they produced, I forget the name of the gentleman who actually produced it, and even if I did remember it, saying his name would be extremely difficult for me, but he came up with the Oneirocritica, and this was kind of like the pseudo-dream dictionary. If you find books of dreams in the bookstores, it's kind of like a dream dictionary where you can look up something that you've dreamed, and we'll have the explanation for the dream.
I dreamed of money. What does this
I dreamed of
mean?
money. What does this mean? And it's like a direct correlation. This was a very influential book. Here's the thing. I kind of hate them. And
Surprise.
Dream interpretation, I think, in this kind of respect, is really not where we need to go. I think this whole list of correspondences thing that I've talked about in previous episodes, that's not how magic works. It's not an A to B. It never is. The journey
There's
is
no definition for an exact way of dreaming.
Yeah, exactly. But we need to also know that the Oneirocritica had a giant influence on the cunning folk tradition, which is kind of what we consider folk magic or like a natural witchcraft almost for a long period of time. But there are better ways than using a dream dictionary or just interpreting dreams, which I will hopefully get into. Although there is no consensus about dreams, specifically what the function of dreaming is, there's also no consensus on knowing whether or not animals dream. We're pretty sure that they do. I mean, if anybody who lives with a cat or lives with a dog has probably seen them doing some funny things in their sleep. I remember the one video of a dog. It's running in its dream, and then it wakes up, and it literally runs into the wall, right? One of my favorite videos was one that was released, maybe it was only last week. I have it up on my Twitter account, but it was of a sleeping octopus, and it was changing its colors in a way that's not typical. There have been studies done about rats, and rats that have been woken up from sleep and put into a maze, they will actually run the maze far quicker than rats that have been awake for a large period of time. But this is one of those things where I just think, I think we can say that animals probably, definitely dream.
They do have a conscience.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so, but I definitely think so. Yeah. So just, again, let's just use common sense and just be like, come on, they definitely do. So, what is the process of dreaming? To start off with, I want to say this. Everybody dreams. I dream. you dream crazily, but you also dream. Everybody dreams. If Werner Herzog, the German filmmaker, was once remarked, the reason my films are so great is because I don't have any dreams. So when I make my movies, that's me enacting the dreams that I don't have. And that's actually bullshit. Like he really does have dreams. What people say when they don't have dreams is that they don't remember their dreams. For people that say that I don't have dreams, I usually give them like one big tip. I say, well, when you go to bed, and especially when you plan to dream, do it kind of on the sly so it's not totally in your mind, but set your alarm for 4 hours after you go to sleep, because you will wake up, and dream recall increases exponentially if you wake up in the middle of REM. It's almost like flipping on a light switch. And when I've suggested this to people and I've asked them, it's like, so do you have your dream? They're like, that's insane. I had the first dream I can remember in a long time. It's one of the tricks, if not the easiest trick for people that say that they don't remember their dreams. Set your alarm when you plan to go to sleep, and you will, like, oh, you suddenly have your dreams. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
That's true.
Because what is the REM? Well, they're a band, really great. They were one of my favorite bands, but let's talk about it. So, in the early 1950s, there was a gentleman by the name of Eugene Azorinsky. He was broke. He had a younger son. He had a wife. He had just had a newborn baby. He didn't have a degree, but somehow the University of Chicago, they let him attend their classes and their laboratories as a graduate student. And one day, he dusted off an old electroencephalograph, which is an EEG machine. He hooked it up to his son, and he wanted to monitor his son while his son was sleeping. So he observed kind of like the normal, what we would think would happen when we sleep. So like lower heart rate, body temperature going down. And then suddenly he saw something very weird. It was like the body, it completely shifted. Blood pressure went up, and it seemed like it was almost as if his brain states would match that of being awake. His son was very definitely asleep, but it was like that he was conscious. But his son wasn't. The first thing that Eugene thought was that this was an anomaly, something was wrong with his son, or else he thought that the machine was broken. But he persisted, and he repeated with other subjects, and he got the same results. Quickened heart rate and breathing. The subjects would go in and out of this phase, almost like they were on a roller coaster ride. And he also noticed their eyes would move back and forth under closed eyelids. So, Eugene, this broke down on his luck guy, who was thankfully University of Chicago, beautiful campus, by the way. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous university. But he came up and found the biggest breakthrough in sleep science. It starts here. He found the rapid eye movement that occurs during this phase of sleep, and he dubbed it REM, rapid eye movement. So, this state is when we dream. REM is 20 to 25% of the sleep cycle. We're in and out of it, as I said, like a roller coaster. Breathing, heart rate fluctuates. What's really cool is that muscles become paralyzed during REM. And this is probably to help us so that we don't hurt ourselves or act out our dreams, thankfully. As far as the stages of dreaming are concerned, there's about 4. And I'm not going to go through the alpha waves and blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to give like a Cole's notes, if you will. So first stage is dozing, which is your body gets heavier. There's images that kind of come up in your mind, or there's lights kind of do weird things as well. And there's strange sensations. Your muscles might twitch. Like you've noticed sometimes a muscle twitch. And this is also the state when you have that wonderful thing where you are suddenly feel like you're falling. And you shock yourself awake. Do you have this?
Yeah, it's like you're flinching almost. You wake up and you're like...
Yeah, exactly.
Or you notice that your fist or certain fingers are sore because you're probably like clenching. Yeah,
this is something called hypnagogia, which is also... I mentioned this before. I'm going to do an episode on hypnagogia because when I started to utilize the hypnagogic state, it was a mind-blowing experience, and it's one of my go-tos as far as my magical paradigm. It is really wonderful, and I'll go into that sometime in the future. And it's the gains that you get from the hypnagogic state is really, really cool. All right, enough of that. Step 2 is the prep stage. You're asleep. Your heart rate drops, your core temperature drops, things slow down. Step 3 is the repair mode. So you're in deep sleep. This is actual deep sleep. This is where you get your rest from your body. It begins to rebuild its muscles, repair bone mass. It strengthens the immune system. If you're sick, this is the kind of sleep that is needed because your immune system is able to actually you start. It's like rebooting a computer. This stage, you're starting to. I know everybody likes computer metaphors. Here you go. All of the things that you want from sleep. Perhaps the state that you would prefer to be in, as opposed to the REM stage for somebody that lucid dreams every night. Which is again kind of where they say, well, people that lucid dream all the time, they still have this deep sleep state. Like they should feel rested. That's kind of like their argument.
It's very short.
Yes, yeah.
It's incredibly short.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like it's equivalent to maybe 1 hour, 2 hours of deep sleep out of like 6-7 hours of sleeping.
Marlin is a nursing student.
Yeah.
Yes, she is. Ooh. She is. This is her wheelhouse, if you will. But something funny happens after stage 3. It's almost like we take steps backwards. We actually go through to step 2, back to step 2. So we go to the kind of the prep stage, and then we actually go back a little bit to step 1, and this is to prepare us for step 4, which is REM sleep. This is the dream realm. You're there. And you go in and out of this, and there's segments of time. Some people have spend upwards of 30 minutes in REM. It's short, and again, we go in and out between stages 3 and stages 4. This is the sweet spot, and this is where dreaming occurs. We know where it occurs. So thank you, Eugene. So let's get into some of the strange aspects of dreaming. There was an Italian study done in 2011 that came to this conclusion, and I quote, "The neurophysiological mechanisms underlying the encoding of recall of episodic memories may remain the same across different states of consciousness." What does that mean? Yeah. Basically, it means your brain, Marlin, cannot distinguish the difference between dream experiences and real experiences. To your brain, they are the same. And MRI scans have actually confirmed this. And for a magician, this is an incredibly useful information to have. The brain, that it doesn't distinguish between what happens when you're conscious and what happens when you're unconscious and sleeping. This idea is so wonderful and great, and I think it needs to be given a bit more credence. There was a book I mentioned last episode, or during the consciousness episode, by David Eagleman called Incognito: The Secret Lives of the Brain. And in this book, he basically states that the difference between being awake and being asleep is merely the data coming in from the eyes, which anchors perception. A sleep vision, dreams, is perception that is not tied down to anything in the real world. Waking perception is something like dreaming with a bit more commitment to what's in front of you. And he goes on to talk about what's called unanchored perception. So these are people that are kept in solitary confinement with no lights, or are sensory deprivation techniques. The Greeks actually had chambers that they would call incubation, which would just be smaller rooms with no light in them whatsoever, and they would have dreams. And what happens in this state is that our mind creates hallucinations. It creates these visions to make us feel that we're actually experiencing something. So what this goes to show is that the line between dreaming perception and waking perception is incredibly thin.
It goes back to people who say that they don't dream, which is, we know physiologically is impossible. Yep. The firing of neurons in your brain don't just stop because you close your eyes and you don't remember that what's happening. It doesn't stop. So when that doesn't stop, they're not just firing and making no movements. Something has to happen. That's because your brain's at work, and it's constantly at work. And if you don't remember it, it could be, for people who lucid dream, such as myself, I don't remember some dreams if I drink excessively or if I smoke marijuana. That's how you shut it off. Doesn't mean I am not dreaming.
It doesn't mean you're exactly.
I just don't remember them.
You just don't remember them.
Exactly.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's one of the reasons. I mean, I might catch some flack here, but I don't detest it, but I actually do not enjoy marijuana for that main reason. The main reason is that I don't remember my dreams. I live an extremely fruitful dream life.
It turns off your brain.
Yeah, and I don't want that. I like my dreams. My dreams are incredibly important, and this might sound childish or weird to people, but I need my dreams to live. I really, really do.
It's a sought-after ritual, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a ritual.
So as I've said earlier, what is the function of dreams? Why dreams? Why do we do this? So there's some explanations. In fact, there's hundreds, if not thousands of explanations as to why we dream. The biggest one, and the one that we're kind of confronted with right now in this day and age, is the materialist physicalist notion that dreams are kind of just like a brain fart of the day's experiences and memories, both objective and subjective. It's just our brain kind of like off-gassing in some strange way, or like an expulsion of mental detritus, which I think is wrong. Wrong.
Can be true to a point.
True to point, yeah.
At some point.
I will get into this as well. There's another theory that it is experience preparation, which is that the weird scenarios that we dream, say of like a predator, like a tiger or a bear in your dream, is somehow preparing you for if you should encounter one in your real life, that you won't be as scared of it. You won't or say like somebody's angry at you in a dream. What happens when somebody's angry in your real life? You'll deal with it in this strange...
It's like you're practicing in your dream so you can deal with it in real life.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Couldn't have said it better. This one I think is wrong, but there's also maybe a little bit of truth to it. The idea, though, that dreams serve little to no function at all, I just have to shake my head. I really, really do. We can't have an episode of dreams without talking about Sigmund Freud. Mm-hmm. We absolutely have to throw him in there. In 1899, he published The Interpretation of Dreams, which was a groundbreaking book. To this day, it is one of the great books of psychological thought. It's a hugely important book. I think that people should read this book. I really do. Its purview and its scope is unreal. It's a very important work. It's where such things as the Oedipal complex comes from. If this stuff is interesting to you, you have to read The Interpretation of Dreams. In this book, Freud basically says that dreams are wish fulfillment, that all of our repressed conflicts and desires that we've accumulated through life during sleep, our unconscious mind attempts to resolve these conflicts. Again, there's so much more to The Interpretation of Dreams. Please read it. But there's something to go on here, I think. There has to be.
Do you think it's a way to live a reality that you're unable to live in modern times?
Yeah, I think in some way it could be that as well. Yeah, that's got to be a part of it.
Which is why most people don't dream about everyday dreams as they happen. They dream of a world that does not exist.
Right.
And that's bizarre.
That's very bizarre. Freud thought that this was kind of like these strange symbols and escapes. They were kind of like spies within the unconscious, just like sneaking this information from the bad parts of your mind to try and like get them in there. So in some way you're able to live your life without going fucking crazy. To go back to this problem though, there is no consensus with what a dream's function is. But here's my 2 cents with something like dreams. And I've said this in previous episodes. It is so vast, dreams and dreaming, and so common. It's never only one thing. Ever. It probably has aspects of all these theories that I've mentioned and all the theories that have been out there. It's probably in some way all of them in varying degrees, which is infuriating. It's nearly countless in what dreams can accomplish.
Which is why my question was, is it sometimes better to not understand them?
Yeah, perhaps that is a good question. Last episode, I also brought up the idea of it was from a poet. He basically said which mysteries will remain unsolved, and his answer was the obvious one. That's dreams. I think it's one of those ones that just will not be solved. And I don't think this idea of currentism, which I also talked about, is going to solve it. It's like someday we will know what dreams are, and we'll know exactly what they're for. It's going to be an A to B correlation, and we're going to close the book on why we dream. I don't think.
How can you solve them when dreams mean something different for each particular person?
Yeah.
They don't mean the same for you and me.
No. They'd like to have a one-size-fits-all that they can put over
That's
everything.
Impossible.
Yeah, I would.
Like you said, there's so many layers to it. It's impossible.
I entirely agree. So the one thing, though, that I can say with absolute certainty, the dumbest theory that it serves little to no function is stupid as fuck. It's egregious and gross when applied to one of the greatest gifts that we have as human beings. Science taking away the wonder merely because it doesn't understand something, I say, fuck you. That's what I say.
Explain that further.
When science, strangely enough, is unable to explain something that almost hinges onto the paranormal or kind of tips into the subjective, science merely kind of just says, well, I can't explain it, so it doesn't play by my rules, the rules that I've set out to submit it to laboratory testing. We can't explain it, so it doesn't matter.
That's what science and physics is that if you don't know it, you find a way to figure it out. There's an entire process about that.
There is an entire process. They admit it's kind of like a skeleton in the closet kind of thing. They're like, well, it has to do something. We can't explain it.
Because you can't attach meaning to dreams.
Yeah.
Not in a sense like going back to ancient Egypt and Babylonian times. I was told as a child is that because my language goes back to Babylonian times, they used to have rituals when kings and queens would try to dream about conflicts that they had to figure out if they can speak to the dead and find answers and lead them into the future.
Yeah.
That's what they use dreams for. And they take them so literally, as I mentioned to you earlier, is that they sacrifice people, they sacrifice newborns, they sacrifice families and pets.
Right. Science, it has this problem where if I can't explain it, it's probably not that important, or it can be explained away somewhat easily. It's just your brain going,
Brain fart.
and that's it. That's all. I just go, what? That doesn't seem like you've answered anything, really. That's really kind of unfortunate that you've got there. Same thing with something like precognition or telepathy. It's just, you can't explain it. It's all anecdotal. It's so we can't.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
People who have Alzheimer's and dementia who have brain scans that show that they've got broken or degenerate neurons, brain neurons, and firing that doesn't happen all the way,
right?
They still have dreams.
What's crazy also is that people that are amnesiacs, they dream about things that actually happened in their life. They will say, oh, I had this weird dream yesterday where I went out and bought a jug of milk, and then while I was walking, some kid kicked it like a soccer ball and it exploded all over this pickup truck. It was the craziest dream. And they're like, no, that actually happened to you. That to me is also mind-blowing. Like, it's so unbelievably cool. So it's time to take dreaming seriously, I think. For this part, I think it's going to be a large segment of what Jeffrey Kripal calls the flip, where we start to say, like, look, science can't explain this. We need to go somewhere else to try and like flip the script a little bit.
Who's Jeffrey?
Jeffrey Kripal is an author that I've mentioned countless times. I seem to bring him up every episode. He's a writer on mysticism, on religion. Okay. He studies comparative religion, but he's kind of switched and he's now talking about consciousness, the supernatural, the paranormal. So Jeffrey Kripal is kind of like, he's one of my heroes. And I think, as I've said before, read all of his books. They're all great. Read Jeff's books. Yeah. So what theory or aspects of dreaming interest me? And hopefully you, as a beginner in magic? Well, I have two that I want to talk about. One not so obvious, and one somewhat obvious if you listen to this program. One of them is going to be contemporary, and the other more historically supernatural. So you ready? Let's jump in.
All right.
So Sue Llewellyn, she is a professor of psychology at the University of Manchester. Well, I'll just preface this, that people are already pissed because she's not a scientist. She studies the humanities. I just also have to say that I think the humanities are where the breakthroughs are going to come through for the next thing. I really do. Again, when somebody says that you don't need to study philosophy or literature as a scientist, I say, no, also fuck you. So I'm going to introduce a concept here that hopefully is mind-blowing, because it was to me when I was younger. Do you know what the art of memory is? Mm-mm. Before we had the printing press from Gutenberg in the I believe it was the 13th century, before we had the printing press, people would have to rely on their memory for information. They would have to memorize things very, very well. And our ancestors, our ancient ancestors, were extremely proficient in memory. Mnemonics became an art form almost. We have tales of the legate or the legate, which would be the leader of a Roman legion. He would not only know the names of every single soldier that fought under him, but he would know their wives' names, he would know their children's names, he would know where they came from, he would know absolutely everything. Scholars and monks, they could memorize enormous segments of texts. Troubadours would, the great troubadour tradition, which was about storytelling and song, they would be able to memorize a song from hearing it once. And it could be an 18 to 30 minute song, and it was like immediately to get there. And people would just say, oh, they were just good at memory. They would do as we do when we try to memorize things, do things by rote.
Right.
Or repetition. Like an actor studying his lines. You do it enough times, eventually it'll get into your brain. This was not what they did at all. Some of them did, but some of them had this other thing called the art of memory. They would create in their minds what would be like a memory theater or a memory church or a castle or a cathedral, and it's absolutely stunning. There's a book by Frances Yates, who I will do an episode on. She's fallen from favor kind of nowadays, but she will get covered, especially because, she's very important to magic. But she wrote a book called The Art of Memory about this aspect. And I think, again, if this is interesting to you, you have to read this book. It is an absolutely mind-blowing book. I remember reading it for the first time and just, it seemed like such a weird concept, and it seemed like she made it up. But we actually have texts of the process that they went through. So I'm going to give you an example. Say it is let's go to the 12th century. And you have to give a lecture to a group of people about kind of the new arts, or the new, well, we would call them sciences, but they would call them arts of the day. So here's what you do. And it's going to be a long lecture. You don't have notes. You don't have a piece of paper in front of you to go off of. What do? You have to rely on your memory. So you create a memory theater. You ready? So this is going to get a bit weird, but we'll get there in the end. You open the door to your memory theater. Let's call it a house. You open the door to your memory house, and as soon as you enter in the door, there is a knight in shining armor who's holding a book, and he's holding this book very close to his face. You walk past him, you see on a chair somewhere near the front door, you see a large snake wearing a pair of glasses. Okay? Interesting. You keep walking, and around the corner, all hanging on the wall, is a painting of a king. Okay? You go past that, there's a set of stairs. Next to the stairs, there is a scales, like some of those old scales you have. You put something on one end goes up, right? And on that scale, on both of the sides of the scale, is a fish. You pick this up, you walk up the stairs. At the very top of the stairs, you see a judge, and the judge is pointing at you. And that's your memory theater. So, here's where it all comes together. So let's go through each of these strange, weird symbols that we look. They almost look dreamlike, right? At night with a book.
It's like you're assigning.
Yeah. So
characters.
You walk in the front door, again, you see a knight. What's the knight doing? The knight's got a book. What is he doing with that book? He's studying the book. Knight, study of night. That's astrology. You go past him to the snake. The most common snake in the area in which you live is called an adder. An adder? Well, what's an adder? What an adder adds things. Adding, arithmetic. Go past that to the portrait of the king. A king, what does he do? He commands the land. He has a kingdom. What does he do to that kingdom? He rules his kingdom. Rules, ruler, geometry. The scales. So you have a scale. You have on each side of the scale a fish. What is a fish covered in? Scales. Yes. What do you do when you go up the stairs? You're scaling the stairs. Scales. Music uses scales. So music, there you go. You get to the top, the judge. What does the judge do? He's passing a judgment on you. He's pointing his finger, and he's judging you. But what is another word for what a judge does at the end of a trial? It's a sentence. He's handing you a sentence. Judges work with sentences. Sentences use grammar. Grammar uses sentences. So from this memory theater, you have astrology, arithmetic, geometry, music, and grammar all there in one place. This is what they did, and this is mind-blowing, that they would create these dreamlike, strange, areas
real time.
in their brain to be able to understand memorize insane amounts of information. So I'm going to go back. Sue Llewellyn, she says that this was very fundamental, nearly intuitive to our brains, the art of memory, and it speaks to something about how our brains function. She contends that dreams are essentially the ancient art of memory operating automatically while we sleep. So, neurologically, memories are encoded in the brain physically as the readiness of dispersed groups of neurons to fire together as they have before. So this is kind of like neurons that fire together, wire together kind of stuff. A dream can be thought of as an associative halo around the events and experiences, both objective and subjective, from your day. And the experience itself isn't represented because your brain does not need to replay it. What the brain does need to do is connect the experiences to other experiences, symbols, and themes so that it is accessible via multiple association pathways and integrated into long-term memory. Does that make some kind of weird sense to you?
Weirdly, yes.
Yeah. So I will put up a link in the show notes to this essay in which she talks about it. It's called Such Things as Dreams Are Made Of. It is one of the more mind-blowing things that I've read in the last year, for sure. And it just made, because the fact that I love Francis Yates' book, The Art of Memory, but this idea, because a memory theater is a dream-like theater, and that is a really great way of memorization. I've done some mnemonic conscious exercises as far as memory recall, and it works. It actually works stunningly well, and it's just very
well. Look at the times table. How is that made? It's all relating numbers in a sequence where you'll remember them later.
Right.
You could attach them to a meeting, or you can try to create a pattern of memory.
Right.
That you would recall later on.
Yeah.
Also, going back to that. The correlation between babies and people who become blind, why they're like early in life or later in life, what do they dream about?
Right.
And we associate dreaming with pictures.
Yep.
But if you're an infant, you don't have
pictures yet. No.
If you become blind later in life, eventually you don't have pictures that will last you that long.
Right.
And it proves that memories and dreams are not just pictures. It's a feeling as well.
It's a feeling, yeah. Absolutely.
So
it's an intuitive feeling.
Yeah.
And when
sounds, it's colors, shadows.
Right.
It's not necessarily pictures, black and white, color, whatever it is.
Right. The mnemonic artists that go through the art of memory, they wouldn't just be of pictures. It would be of like smells and sensation. It was everything.
You use your five senses,
yeah,
is it?
Well, we probably have closer to 20, but
okay.
Yeah. If I was to tilt your chair back, one of those unknown senses called balance would kick in, which isn't considered one of the senses. Anyways, I think this theory is onto something because it makes sense in the respect that the weirder remembered aspects of dreams seem to somehow be the more memorable aspects of them. Mm-hmm. And they seem to link to the more profound experiences in our lives, but they are not directly represented. They say something abstract about literal experiences, which is also the strength and the weakness of dreams. One of the tricks that mnemonic artists, memory artists would use is the weirder it is, the more easy it is to remember, but also the sexier it is, the easier it is to remember. And sexy dreams, they be pretty easy to remember.
Yeah. Because we probably want them to be related to real life.
Yeah, this could be true. Mm-hmm. So this is what made Freud suspicious of dreams to begin with, and probably wrong about them in a strange way. That the weirdness / sex isn't there for conflict resolution. It's there for our brain to integrate experience into memory. So it's not the same as its true meaning, which I think is where Freud kind of gets off. What's weird is that we're starting to understand how memory works within, and associative memory works within dreams. Very recently, they've done tests where people that are woken out of REM sleep make very strange associations, not just very easy associations. Like if I was to say night, what would your association be? Most people would say day, right? Night, day.
Yeah.
If I say the word on, what are you going to say?
Off.
Yeah. So people woken up out of REM sleep, they will say something. If you say something like hot, they will say something like sun. which is really strange. And they're also given people waking up out of REM sleep are able to make associations quicker and stranger from things that seem to be so separate and not even connected in any way very quickly. There was a study done of people that were woken up out of REM, and they were given 3 words, which I believe were falling, actor, and dust. You think, what the hell did these 3 have in common? But some people that have been woken up out of REM, they say, oh, star. Falling star. You have an actor, which is a celebrity, which is a star. And you have stardust. So this is actually really quite incredible. Yeah. So our brains, they crave memory, and it is also kind of its boon and also kind of its fall also at the same time. It's kind of because false memories are actually very, very, very common. But creation of memory is a huge function for the brain. So our ancestors knew this better than we do now, especially the ones that used the art of memory. And the art of memory seems to serve this function. It's like our ancestors knew that the brain needs to do this, so they kind of tapped into it and used it to help them propel them forward in a time where we didn't have records of things, or we had to memorize lots of bits of information. So I've oversimplified a ton of this theory and left out much of it. So please read the article that I linked to in the show notes by Sue Llewellyn. It's really, really great. And also read chapter 9 of the book I mentioned earlier called Time Loops by Eric Wargo. He goes into Sue Llewellyn's theories far easier than I did, and he actually goes into some of the neuroscience of the synapses and whatnot. But I love this theory. It probably can't be proven, and she's actually been hit with a ton of people that said it's an oversimplification and it can't be tested in any laboratory circumstance in any way, shape, or form. No experiment can be devised to test this theory. To me, it seems like a very functional model, but again, it's probably not the only one answer. And so remember what I said before. So, and ask me again in 5 years, I'll probably have some new theory that I think that's like really great. And that's just what dreams.
It's evolving.
Yeah, that's just what dreams are. So to put it short and to basically give you the summary of this, dreams are the nightly metabolism of waking experience by the brain, like metabolism of food by the digestive system. What Freud thought were symbolic disguises hiding some deep, dark secret were really the associative connective tissue of long-term memory, the way recent events are made more accessible and findable by connecting both logically and illogically to things they remind us of. So in a way, according to Eric Wargo in Time Loops, he said that Freud can be applauded because of what he was as a pioneer in memory research as opposed to psychology, mapping out the illogical, poetic tropes our brain uses to file and retrieve information. So that's it. So that's a theory that I absolutely love. So what of this other function of dreaming that I'm kind of obsessed about? Well, memory seems to be important to dreams. We know this. So what if dreams allow us to perceive memories of things that haven't even happened yet? What if we are able to somehow fetch memories of the future? This is some of the more fascinating aspects of dreaming, and I think it's going to be something that in the next at least 10 to 15 years we're starting to put a lot more validity into. So we know for a fact ancient cultures thought that dreams gave them omens and they gave them prophecies, and I don't think that this is incorrect. I think there's more evidence for this than telepathy during dreams. There's a guy called Stanley Krippner. He wrote a book in 1974 with Montague Ullman and Alan Vaughan called Dream Telepathy. And it's an interesting book. It's kind of a tough read. It's very, very dated. But I think we need to take a step back and say that we need to go to our ancestors and see that, no, actually, there is something prophetic about our dreams. And there's so many stories of people, and of course they're all anecdotal, but there's so many stories of people that have had a dream and then the dream comes true. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them. There's so many cases of people dreaming about 9/11 before 9/11 happened. It's quite stunning. And again, Eric Wargo's book, Time Loops, goes into this in great detail. I'm going to tell a quick story here about my favorite dream prophecy, or precognition via dream. It's from a gentleman named Victor Goddard. He was an Air Force commander in the Royal Air Force in England. In 1946, he was attending a party, He later on had to take a flight to Tokyo, but he was at this party, and he was just walking the room, and one of the guests says, "I don't understand why we're having a party. This is a tragic day. Old Vicky's dead. Poor old Vic," kind of thing. And Victor stopped this guy. He said, "Sorry, what? Victor Goddard. He's dead." He says, "I'm Victor Goddard."
Yeah.
He went, oh shit. And he kind of Victor took this guy aside and says, what happened? He says, "I must have dreamed it. I must have dreamed that you were on a flight. It was you and two other men and a woman, and you crashed your plane somewhere in the mountains. You crashed your plane, the wings iced up, and you guys crashed and everybody died." And Victor's like, interesting. This is kind of strange. I have to take a flight later on today. I'll kind of put this in the background. He went back to the party. This other gentleman went back to the party as well. He got a telegram. Basically said, "Oh, by the way, your flight, we're going to add a couple of people to your flight." He went, "Okay, yeah. Who?" They said, "Oh, just a couple of guys." He went, "Okay, so that's two of the three people in this guy's dream that are there." A little bit later on, I think it was maybe an hour after this, he got a telegram or a phone call, and they said, this other person, a diplomat, was supposed to come with you. He can't come, but he's going to send his secretary.
It's a woman.
He's like, "What sex is this person that's coming?" "Oh, it's just a woman." So he's shitting bricks at this point. He's very, very scared, and but he kind of composes himself and he goes on this flight. Well, guess what happens? The wings iced up, just like in the dream. And they crashed on an island just off of Japan, on a pebble beach. But this island had mountains. There were mountains there. They were very beautiful mountains. But the thing that was the difference was that nobody died. Nobody was even injured. And in fact, Goddard said that it was almost a preparation of the inevitability of what was going to happen to him that helped him prepare mentally that this was going to be the case, and helped him help everybody out of the wrecked aircraft and save their lives. Anyways, this kind of thing happens all the time, and the fact that he lived and was able to write about it is so crazy. But what's also crazy about it is that Victor Goddard was reading a book at the time that this party happened that this other gentleman was reading, and it's called An Experiment with Time by J.W. Dunn. And I've talked about this book before. I think it was in the Coincidences episode. And it goes through us being able to see glimpses of the future and how this is actually probably something inherently human within us. And he goes through dreams as well. This is a book, again, if this is interesting to you, you got to read An Experiment with Time. It's a wonderful, fantastic read. I think we can say, and at least I can say, that this is a very real phenomenon. And as Eric Wargo goes into in time loops, we're experiencing the time loop, but we're not seeing the event itself. What we are actually seeing is our reaction to the events. It's not that people are intuitively seeing 9/11 occur. They're seeing their reaction, just the emotional baggage that comes with an event like that, or their reaction to a coincidence, like, oh, this happened, and then I dreamed of a car crash happened, that was totally crazy. So you're actually intuiting your future self. You're not seeing the event, you're seeing yourself in the future. You're seeing a memory of your memory that's yet to occur. So this is like a giant time loop. It is insane. I think that dreams are one of the best ways of interacting with these time loops, and it's very, very cool. With that in mind, because we're coming close to the end, what do we do? So what do we do with dreams? Before you become a magician, and if people are curious about magic, I say that you have to start with dreams. I think before anything, obviously read the Robert Anton Wilson book, read the Gary Lockman book, Caretakers of the Cosmos. But active work, actually doing things, start with your dreams. It is fundamental to magic without dispute. It is a free technology, and the gains are enormous. You also just need to remember that you're not remembering the dream when you do dream recall. You are just remembering the memory of the dream, right? So what's the best thing to do? Dream journal. I think if you're starting on magic, you have to have a dream journal. I have a dream journal. Write down your dreams as soon as you remember them. Here's what I do. So I can try to give you a little glimpse of what I do. Before going to bed, I try to, if I really want to experience a dream, put in earplugs, eye mask, try to go to bed at the same time. If I'm really having trouble remembering my dreams, I'll do that thing that I mentioned earlier. We're waking up 4 hours after I try to go to sleep. It works every time, strangely enough. But I queue up my phone to a voice recording app, and I literally get it to the point where all I have to do is I have to wake up, turn my phone on, and hit the record button. And I will, almost like as a somnambulist, just rattle off. I keep my eyelids closed, as little information as possible, and I just talk into my phone. and whatever comes to my mind arises. I just say every little bit of it out loud, get it all out there. I turn my phone off, and usually I'll go back to sleep. And what I will later do is that I will put this up on the internet. I actually have a website where I upload these. No, you cannot have the address to this website. I think I've showed it to one other person before, just to show them what I did. And but 50 points to anybody who finds it, but you're not going to find it, so good luck, because it's very personal, and I do use people's names in them. This is great, not just for propagating and adding fuel to dreams itself. I use it in the sense that you have evidence for precognition. You see the results there. J.W. Dunn, who wrote An Experiment with Time, he said that after about a week, throw your dreams away. If it doesn't happen before then it's not valid. I seem to have, as far as precognition of events or situations, it seems to be within a week to 2 weeks. It's really fucking scary when it happens the next day. But It has happened. I think it's happened at least 6 or 7 times for me, and it's really fucking frightening. But this is something that I do to this day. It is extremely important. And for people that want to get into magic, this is where you start, because this is how you start the workflow of magic. You have something, a ritual, you have something you do, you record what occurs, and then you look back later to see if you have a result. So this, you have to get familiar with this workflow. It's very, very important. The other thing to recognize about dreams is that intention is extremely important. If you're having trouble with dreams, just thinking on a near minutely basis that you want to have a dream tonight will make you have a dream. It's really, really fucking weird. Before you go to bed, intend to have a dream. That's like magic. That is magic. Just intention is such a big, big part of it.
It's true with lucid dreaming as well.
Yes. When we get to do I hope you will come back for the lucid dreaming episode. I really do. I would hate to talk to somebody who's never had one. Intention itself is so very important to dreaming. Another thing, throw out your dream dictionaries. Throw them away. Just get rid of them. I mean, I'm just going to go off the top of my head with our brain does not work with this correlation. Say you dream of a butterfly. You look it up in a dream dictionary, a butterfly would mean transformation. You're going from a caterpillar into a transformation into a beautiful butterfly. Your brain, it probably goes more like, oh, butterfly, dirty pants. Yeah. And you'll be like, what the fuck does that mean? Your brain probably sees butterfly, butter is greasy, butter leaves grease, pants, they have a fly, pants also kind of look like a butterfly, the 2 legs, 2 wings, butterfly, dirty pants, stay on your wings, something to do with dirty pants. Like that's more correlative.
It's like code that you may not figure out right
away. And it's an enigma, and it's different for everybody. So your dream dictionaries, get rid of them. Get rid of them.
They're silly.
They're silly. You don't need them. Another thing about this dream journal, all of my family has talked about this. I have a ridiculous memory already, and it's really, really quite, I don't want to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I will remember things that astonishes my family members. The dream journal or my dream website helps me in a great way that I can listen to or read a dream and I am back there. And it's not like I've added things. It's I can close my eyes and it's like I put on a VHS or a DVD or a Blu-ray, whatever people have these days, and I'm back in that dream. Like it's that vivid. It will take time, but this is part of the training as well. But the ability to listen to a dream that you've previously recorded helps you both with being able to visualize it and see if in fact you are in some strange way precognitive. So that this is really, really cool. I also need to mention that before you go to bed, try to stay away from the electronics. Try to stay away from screens. People are having problems with dreams. Stay away from a screen. At least an hour before bed, do not look at any screens, except to turn on your app to record on your phone to record your dream. That's it. That's all you're allowed. Okay. So how else to amplify dreams? Well, I'm going to just give out some suggestions. I think that books are very conducive to dreaming. Even books about dreams, or at least written in a dreamlike state, are very good. My personal favorite is a book called Hebdomeros by Giorgio de Chirico. He was a surrealist artist. I believe he was Greek-born to Italian parents. He moved to France. His paintings are really quite cool. They're of towers and empty streets and colosseums. And he wrote one book called Hebdomeros. It reads like a dream. It's a very odd book, but I found when I was reading this book, I had very, very vivid dreams. There's another book that's recent called Somnium by Steve Moore. He was Alan Moore, the guy who wrote Watchmen. He was his best friend. They're not related, but he wrote a book called Somnium about Selene and the moon and dreams. It's one of those books that's a dream within a dream, but it works quite well. Poetry, guys. Poetry is the language of dreams. It's extremely, extremely helpful. Philip Larkin came out with a book, I believe in the 50s, called The Oxford Book of 20th Century Verse. Anyways, it's some of the best poetry that's ever been written. Poetry helps dreams. It allows them to grow. It's really, really quite incredible. William Burroughs and Brian Geisen came up with something called the Dream Machine. Now, what it is you cut out some holes in cardboard, you make a cylinder, you hang a light bulb from the cylinder, and then you put the cylinder on a record player that I believe is either going at 45 or 33 rotations per minute. You close your eyelids, and you have the light that's going through the cutout of the cardboard go on your eyelids. I've used dream machines before. I find them not the most effective for dreaming, but what I will say, very strangely though, is that when I take bus rides to the country, either in the morning or at night, and the sun is peeking through the trees, I always turn my face to the window and close my eyelids, and just the sun going through the trees, for some reason, I always have a really brilliant dream. Lastly here, float tanks, sensory deprivation tanks, you will have some really crazy dreams. They're very, very helpful for that. But with that, I hope everybody the most pleasant dreams, and that's the dream episode. And we made it, Marlin. We did it, and that's great. Thank you so much. I can't wait to have you back. And dare I say, I'm very tempted, and I'm not just tempted. I'm gonna lock it down here. This is the end of Dreams Part 1, because I could talk about dreams all day. I've really scratched the surface. There's got to be at least 3 to 4 to 5.
You got to do nightmares.
Nightmares.
How do we go from dreaming to being frightened?
Yeah. I hope that you will be a recurring guest whenever we visit the stages of Oneironaut.
Thank you.
Which was the Greek god of dreams and dreaming.
I shall.
With that, I will say, please head to whatmagicisthis.com. There you will find links to Facebook, which I don't use too much. You'll find Twitter, which I use occasionally, and Instagram, which I use almost as much as Twitter, maybe a little less. But also on there, you will find show notes. Guys, I go out of the way for those show notes. There's some really great show notes. They will give you something to pore over. Also on my website, you will find links to iTunes, to Google Play, to Stitcher, ways to download it on your Android device. I've got Spotify, TuneIn, Radio Public, iHeartRadio. I'm trying to get on Pandora. They haven't replied to me. I don't know what their problem is. Anyways, maybe eventually I'll be on there. If they have podcasts, I'm going to be on there. What Magic Is This? Just look it up. It should come up. And guys, also, if you email me, at this point, I will reply. I got some really lovely emails today from a listener in Mexico, and that was really, really cool. So I told him how much I loved Mexico. Anyways, keep them coming. I will try to answer them as much as possible. The last thing, if you can, be so kindly, if you want to leave a review on iTunes, that would be greatly appreciated. If you would like to write something about my podcast, that would be even better. I would give you 50 points for that. So if you find my dream journal online and you put a review on iTunes, that gives you 100 What Magic Is This points, or WMITs. Other than that, that's the end of our show. And I'm going to end this with the post-show quid pro quo. Marlin, of all the people I've met, you are one of the most interesting as far as the things that have happened to you in your life. I'm not going to ask you to go into them, but they are quite stunning. I just want to know, because I'm very curious, who in your life has had the greatest influence on you?
I'd say my grandfather from my mom's side.
Okay.
He is the reason I'm obsessed with the moon before I knew I should be. Okay. That there's certain things that pop up in our dreams that mean more than we think. My grandfather taught me about the moon way before I knew how it could save us.
How? So you have a tattoo of the moon on your arm.
Yes, and that is specifically related to when we were illegally immigrating through a body of river from Turkey into Greece in the dead of night, with no light but the moonlight shining onto the body of water. Right. And when I was scared, I was told to just focus on the moon because it was so large and beautiful. That
it is, and that story is beautiful. I remember when you first told me that, and I just thought, it was like, oh my God, that's
And it was
gorgeous.
very distracting, considering what a child was going through at the time. Right. Years before that, my grandfather, in the dead, humid heat of Iraq, most people would sleep on the roofs. This was the common norm because you didn't have the luxuries of air conditioning.
Right.
And so when you're living in the country and it's dark and all you see is the stars and the moon, he would just tell me stories about it. And I'm sure they were all made up, but they were beautiful. And that was fascinating because even from sleeping on a roof, you can see the craters of the moon. It was just so bright and so large.
Yeah.
So to think that that was a recurring theme,
Right.
and how it's almost like someone through your subconscious was guiding you through safety.
Right. That's amazing.
Through a common subject.
Your grandfather was a great man?
He was.
Yeah.
He was the kindest person, and that's an understatement.
Really?
Yeah.
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 It's amazing how some people just have that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you don't think about that until you're an adult.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Marlin, you have been one of the best guests I've had on the show.
Thank you.
Please come back. I'm going to have you back again.
Lucid Dreams.
This is just Dreams Part 1. The next show, hopefully, we'll do Lucid Dreams. I think this is something we can get into somewhat early on, but that's the podcast, everybody. Marlin, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you.
I hope you will come back. And to everybody out there, I wish you pleasant dreams. Please join me again on What Magic Is This, hopefully in 10 days. And we'll talk at you soon. Bye-bye.